Hey YouTube, Awesome Writer here, coming at you for the latest King-ohger episode review with episode 20, I believe it is. And this is the big final for now fight between Rackley and his brother Gira for the Battle Royale that we teased last week. And it wound up being a good episode as usual, but it started off with me being a little bit worried, as we actually opened up with Rackley's wedding the Black Ranger's sister, as we left off on kind of a weird place, both with the last episode and then this one, in this weird thing where Rackley's couldn't get the justice that he was supposedly deserved, no, that he did deserve, but that was supposedly we couldn't give him the justice he deserved because of the way that Yanma already got justice, and then Gira, challenged him to a battle royale, and then Rita pointed out that even though things were kind of screwed up to the point where he couldn't get justice, his crimes likely would have come out in due time, and Gira screwed it up with his whole annoying Toku protagonist act. And so as a result, we have Rackley basically behaving business as usual at the beginning of the episode, as well as wedding the Black Ranger's sister, and asking him to get the scepter back for him, which I was a little bit worried. I was like, I know we're doing the fight because I saw the little scenes in the preview, but I was worried we were setting things back or making prep to set things back to a bit more of the same status quo, as we had already set up a possible new status quo, and I was worried, and I was excited by the possibility of the changing dynamics. And thankfully, after that little bit of a mixed intro, once we got to the battle and stuff like that, it ended up not being the case, and all my worries were gone. As the battle starts, Rackley did get the crown back, so he starts off in the Okuagata Ohsama power-up, which I was very happy about because that's my favorite version of it, and I had mentioned, I hope we still are able to see it sporadically throughout the series after he lost it so immediately. So obviously he lost it again in this episode, as during the fight, Gira knocks it clean off his head so that he can end up using it, which was a really cool move. But it was cool to see him get it back for this battle, and I hope that in the future, I'm sure since they made the suit, we'll see at least a couple more times. In fact, I imagine down the road when we get the inevitable redemption arc, they might pass off the form and continue to share it or something like that. But still, nonetheless, it was cool to see that form at the start. Ultimately, Gira gets the upper hand on him, and he basically says, I'm willing to forfeit the fight and let you keep ruling if you just admit what you did. He's like, just admit. Can you just admit? And he refuses to, and he uses the opportunity in the opening to gain the upper hand again, because Gira basically says to him, just admit what you did and I'll surrender because I remember a kinder brother that had a different philosophy. And when he's doing that, he's like, to hell with you, and he starts slashing at him, and he gains, not the upper hand again, well he does eventually, sort of, but they start fighting again, and basically this is when the public opinion against Rackley finally turns the tide, as that was something else I was worried about at the beginning of the episode, as it seemed like in the previous episodes we finally had the public realizing Rackley was a douche, and then this episode, they're like, yeah, King Rackley's again. But then, thankfully, immediately there were some people coming in saying, no, I'm rooting for Gira because he actually saved us. So it was kind of interesting to have a couple scenes where you had people on Team Rackley's, Team Gira, instead of the cartoonish Team Rackley's all the way love, despite the fact that he's been very shady. It's taken the citizens way too long to catch on. But I was glad, again, that my worries were immediately squashed in terms of them not only having this debate about who's better with, Gira having his supporters against the most annoying character in this show, and then finally, during the fight, when Rackley starts being like, I am the Senate, and I hate peasants, and he starts trash-talking, he's like, especially the guy in the bowler hat that defends me, I hate him most of all. Then people finally turn on Rackley as they see his true colors in the fight, and Gira is able to ultimately win. Now, during the fight, something else interesting happens that builds off of something from the beginning of the episode, which was, I don't remember this dude's name, the servant dude, he's the member of his right hands or whatever, that I don't know their names, I just call them Bulk and Skull, but he was getting on Bulk's case earlier about you didn't stand by me when the Bugner Rock were here, and he shows up in the fight with the javelin, and that ties into another part. This ties into stories, where, like I said, there was that side plot about the Black Ranger supposedly getting the javelin back for Red, but ultimately he gives it to Gira again so that he can win the fight, which felt like just a little bit of a redux of the previous episode where he pledged his loyalty, but whatever. But he ultimately tricked him and had a trick one that he came up with Jeremy. But so that plot was converging with the plot about Bulk trying to prove himself by stabbing Gira during the fight, but when he gets blown back by the prank, it's revealed that he is one of the Bugner Rock, and we don't know how long it's been. Rackley is like, whoa, what the hell? How long has Rhodey been a Skrull? He's like, I don't know, you'll have to stay tuned and find out. And so that was kind of a big reveal within everything else, which was kind of interesting, as I'm not invested in that character, to find out, oh my god, poor guy, how long has he been kidnapped? But I am curious how long he's been replaced by this Bugner Rock, which is an interesting twist within the episode. But yeah, we ultimately end with Gira winning, and he is now officially the rule of Shu Goddamn. And I'm really excited by the change in status quo. Like I said, I was excited as we set things in motion for, Rackley's being in a very different place, possibly going for a different arc from here on out. Not, in terms of his goals, but like being in a different position than just being the same place Rackley's has been this whole time, which is, ruling the kingdom and making chess moves from afar. And then, having Gira, finally a ruler, I think is going to bring about some really interesting dynamics, and I like that it changes the status quo up. Now, overall, I thought the episode was pretty good. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because I do feel that some of the pacing was a little bit jumbled at the beginning, and there was some just, strangeness to that. I know that it kind of, was more on me of I was worried this stuff was going to happen and then it didn't. But it just made the episode feel weird, it got off on a weird foot where we ended with, I'm challenging you to a battle royale, and then the first quarter of the episode I felt just confused. But I still thought it was a really solid episode. The fight was great. I like that we put a kind of a definitive ending point on this arc. I was going to say end, but then I said ending point on this arc, and that we're going to be heading into a new dynamic going forward. My only real concern as of right now is something I've mentioned in previous weeks, is I'm worrying about Jeremy fading into the background, especially since right before this arc began with Rackley's and the power-up, he had some really strong stuff, and he had that episode where he was fighting against them, almost like a villain ranger. Obviously he's not a villain, but you know what I mean, after they all pissed him off because of their selfishness. And I was really excited about them having him have an interesting dynamic, and maybe even being against the Rangers to a degree. And now he's kind of faded into the background and just kind of quietly helping them. And I really hope that doesn't happen. It's funny because I praised the fact that they were able to space out the debut of Oku Agata Ohger and Spider Kimonos and not have them converge. And then now all of a sudden I feel this most recent arc kind of stepped all over the momentum of his story. And I hope that it picks up and he doesn't just fade into the background like a lot of Six Rangers in recent years. I also couldn't help but think back and feel like maybe it would have been more interesting to introduce Kimonos now. Obviously they have this stupid toy politics to deal with, but it would be more interesting almost to introduce him now, as you would have the 5 kingdoms finally united, Gira finally as a ruler. You have a level of cohesion we haven't had since forever, ever, really, in the context of us watching the show. And then all of a sudden you introduce the 6 X Factor. I think that could have been pretty interesting. But we'll have to see. I'm still enjoying the show, and for the most part it hasn't let me down in a major way, but I definitely have those concerns about it, as Spider Kimono started off strong, and I think he kind of got washed away by this arc. And I don't want to get away from the interesting aspects of the characters having interpersonal conflicts. But that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you get notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.